Hello all of you wonderful people, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and I don't know about you, but I love games that present me with a challenge. And I'm not talking about games like Portal, where it's like puzzle-based, even though that is a great franchise, but about titles that follow the rules of adapt or die. In many instances, video games take a softer approach, leading the player through a tutorial level and then doling out small but easy in the grand scheme of things challenges, and then slowly ramping this up and up and up until they're ready to take on the final boss fight. Oh god, how boring, am I right? I mean, I want a game that will utterly break me into pieces unless I've digested every single bit of information that's presented to me. I want to enter the arena as a dumb old child and walk out a virile and broken ass bold man. I want the 10 games that make up this list. So with this in mind, psych yourselves up, as I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video games with incredibly steep learning curves. Oh, and side note, Dark Souls is not on this list because that is too bloody obvious. Eat my astus. Number 10, Fire Emblem. Now, any game featuring permadeath is likely going to have a steep learning curve, right? I mean, here there won't be any checkpoints you can reach and return to once you die. When you're dead, you're dead. Just how I like it. And in the Fire Emblem franchise, you will experience death a lot, as it uses a permadeath mechanic to act as one of the steepest learning curves that you can find. In fact, this is probably one of those games that you won't want to play until you've read through the wiki online twice, or at the very least watched a few dozen hundred videos on YouTube. If you don't head into these games prepared, you are going to get lost very easily, and you may end up making choices which will come around and bite you in the rear as the game progresses. Now, I've personally had many horrible memories of ploughing time and love into characters only for them to drop dead. I don't want to go into it. And as of 2020, there are 16 games in the franchise for you to choose from. For my money, though, you can't go wrong with Three Houses that came out late last year. But honestly, all are good if you like the thought of climbing Everest with your teeth. Number 9, StarCraft. The StarCraft franchise has been around since 1998, and despite being one of the most popular games of its type, there have been only 2 core titles released in all that time. Now this begs the question, why would a game as popular as StarCraft only feature 2 core titles? The answer is simple. The game is so well made, difficult to master and nuanced that there really isn't a need to keep pushing out sequel after sequel when fans are more than happy to keep playing the same games over and over again, and then just plug in some new campaigns every now and again. Aside from the franchise's stellar single-player campaigns and a lore that is so deep that you mistake it for an ocean, for true fans, the money is definitely in the multiplayer offerings, which is where you will likely get slaughtered so quickly that you won't even know what is going on. This is the way of StarCraft. Play, die, learn. Play, die, learn. Play, die, cry a little bit, learn. These are titles that take hundreds of hours to master, and you know what? Most players never will. Number 8, EVE Online. EVE Online is a title that is so huge and packed with content that the majority of players will never see all of it. By this, I mean that there are 7,800 star systems and you can visit each and every one of them. And that's even before you start fighting people, which can see literally thousands of people meet up for a good old ruck. One such battle, the Bloodbath of B-R5RB, stands as one of the largest and most expensive in video game history, and it took 21 hours to complete. Now you might be thinking that a beginner could just jump into one of these battles and coast on other players' experience, but you'd be wrong. It takes hundreds of hours to bring yourself from beginner to advanced, and this game does not make it easy. The basics take hours to learn, and it will require reading a great many pop-ups and information panels to do so, and that's to even stand a chance of being fragged in, I don't know, like 10 seconds? To survive longer than that, you'll need years of practice and an ability to retain a library full of information, so in short, good luck. Number 7, XCOM. The XCOM franchise has had me by the absolute bollocks since I first played the original way back as a kid. It was one of the hardest titles that I ever played, and I came nowhere close to completing it, and yet I couldn't stop playing it because with each attempt I chipped away at its monolith-like learning curve, and also with it a part of my soul. And if you want to master this, you will need to sell that soul to the devil of RNG and percentages. If you're not already a master of strategy games, then any of the titles in this franchise will mold you into one. Just don't rob yourself the joy of being defeated by scum saving all the time, because trust me, learning how to adapt will give you so much more out of this game, and you will truly feel like the alien hordes are eroding you piece by piece until you score a desperate victory, and that is so sweet. There is no right or wrong way to play these titles, as you can force a playstyle through, but just remember this: don't leave yourself open, always move up, and it is better to overspend ammo to score a kill than it is to have another danger in your face next turn. God, I love this franchise. Number 6, Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter games are like a breath of fresh air when it comes to RPGs, as not only do they feature a unique and interesting setting, but never hold your hand through the events. In fact, it wasn't until the third main entry into the series that there was any form of tutorial lead-in, and only now in the latest title are we getting more of a hand-holdy-esque experience, if you can even call it that. However, do not be deterred, as this game is still rightfully challenging for you and some friends to take on online. The task of slaying monsters might sound really simple, but in order to do that, you're going to have to bloody work for it. In order to improve your equipment and weapons, you will need to farm difficult hunts again and again. And yet, much like life, Monster Hunter games do not spell out what you need to actually do. You will need to learn all of the mechanics of the game and plan your quests and intended monster encounters accordingly, and then execute those plans with forethought. If you don't, you're going to wind up getting your player or your party killed, and you will have to spend hours upon hours reading strategy hints online, figuring out just where you went wrong. Number 5, Dota 2. Dota 2 is a multiplayer online battle arena game, and its following is one of the most dedicated on the planet. Huge amounts of money change hands with these battles, and you know what? It is very easy to screw up. That said, you can play the game in less competitive environments, but doing so will earn you a great deal of anger and frustration if you are a noob. When you show up to the game without much experience, the players on your team are not going to be happy, and it makes learning the nuances of the gameplay somewhat difficult. Imagine never having driven a car, but being told to drive one to the airport in heavy traffic, and the car is on fire. Now, Dota 2 is kind of like that for new players. Now granted, once you learn how to play the game, that won't even prepare you for what's to come. Every game you play will feature different enemies, different allies, and a different landscape, making it hard to learn and even harder to master. Number 4, Kerbal Space Program. Kerbal Space Program is pretty much what the title implies. It's a space flight simulation game, and as you might expect, rocket science, while not exactly being brain surgery, is still incredibly tough to learn. The game features a realistic, and by that I mean it's mathematically sound, orbital physics engine, which is incredibly complex. You can pull off real-life orbital maneuvers, including a bi-elliptical transfer and the Hoffman transfer orbits, and if you don't know what those are, then don't worry, you will. And if you put in the time and the effort, you can even get to the bloody moon, which, you know what, is a fun accomplishment, but just as US President John F. Kennedy once said, we do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. We're lucky then that the game itself also happens to be really fun. Number 3, Dwarf Fortress. Slaves to Armok, god of the Blood Chapter 2 Dwarf Fortress, or as most people call it, just Dwarf Fortress, is a construction and management simulation game first released in 2006. Now, the game uses the type of graphics that most modern players will not recognize, but anyone who used to log into bulletin boards before the internet will know as ASCII. The game is set in a procedurally generated fantasy world where players take control of dwarves as they attempt to construct a fortress, no surprise there. But things get incredibly difficult the moment the player tries to, well, play the game. I mean, just look at this. Can you even make out what's going on here? It's impossible to know what you're playing on, let alone what's attacking you. Like any strategy simulation game, there's a lot to learn in order to play the game well, but for many, learning the text-based graphics can be, well, more than a little challenging. That said, even if the game featured regular pixel-based graphics, it would still be complex and difficult to master. Luckily, you can play it with a more updated graphic tile, but unlike its predecessors, it isn't free to play anymore. Boo! Number 2, Civilization. Sid Meier's Civilization is well known in the turn-based strategy video game world, and with good reason, as it's pretty much the absolute best in the genre. Since the game was first released in 1991 on PC, it's been given 5 sequels, a slew of expansions, and it's been made available on pretty much every platform. There are numerous ways to play Civilization, but if you are new to the game, you're going to need to rely heavily on the tutorial, which extends throughout the gameplay. Without this, new players would have no idea what to do, how to do it, where to go, and what to do when they get there. This makes becoming a master strategist of any Civilization game a challenging prospect. Players who have been playing since the first game even find new entries hard to master because each new expansion adds in tons and tons more complexities. The way to win entirely depends on how you want to play. I mean, you can dominate the world with your armies, wow them with science, talk them round in circles, or even be the first civilization to successfully launch a colony ship to Alpha Centauri. And number 1, SimCity. The first SimCity game was published in 1989 and it was an immediate smash hit. Since then there have been dozens of updates, spin-offs, sequels and remastered editions, and love for it has not slowed down a jot. Well, outside the constantly online crap that they tried to pull a while back, but let's not talk about that now. Your goal is to build and manage a city, but if you want to keep things from turning out like, say, Gateshead, then you're going to need to put a huge amount of work into it. The player starts out with an empty landscape and a fixed amount of funds. The first thing that you'll want to do is establish a power plant, lay wires, build roads, build pipes for sewage, and designate zones. But here comes the red tape. For example, you can't build a warehouse in a residential district, and trust me, that's going to be an issue down the line. The way that you plot and plan your city is incredibly important, so the only people who can pick up this game right away and run with it are likely going to be those who are city planners in real life. It's that complex. True, there is a tutorial, but some of the problems that you're going to face are going to be so mad that a simple FAQ turns into a solid old FU. Have fun dealing with all that sewage, my friends. And there we go, those were 10 video games with incredibly steep learning curves. I hope that you enjoyed that, my friends, and I hope that you have a fantastic day, whatever you are getting up to. At the time of recording, it is still the beginning of the year in January. It's cold, brr, it is dark, ooh. But you know what? That doesn't mean that we can't have a nice shining ray of light in the form of hope for a better tomorrow. I hope that you are treating yourself as fairly and as kindly as you possibly can, and if you need help realigning your energies and getting yourself mentally prepared for the year ahead, then remember, you can speak to people about that. Friends, family, and professionals in the support industry, all of us care about you and want you to do well. Go out there and smash it. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me at RetroJ with a 0. If you want to do something a little bit extra for me, then why not check out my board game channel? It's called Live and Let's Dice. At the moment, we're playing tons and tons of Warhammer, talking about all these micromanaging games. Trust me, you have not seen anything until you've seen a Warhammer match. As always, you have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.